Right, so just to introduce myself briefly, my name's Sarah Elis. I'm partner here at Preston Reeves and I'm part of the not-for-profit team here. I've been joined today by my colleague Lucy Hammond. I've been looking after clients in the not-for-profit sector for over 20 years now. And as Susan mentioned, the last 2 years have been particularly difficult for the sector. Obviously, the impact of COVID resulting in losses of income alongside an increase in demand for service delivery. We've noticed in our recent discussions with our clients that they're now taking the opportunity as they emerge from this crisis to look carefully at their strategy and to look at options for the future. Alongside the increase in the cost of living that we're now seeing and experiencing in the UK, it makes sense that one of those options to consider is collaboration, working alongside other charities. So we thought it would be useful today to cover the importance of collaboration. Thank you, Lucy. So to summarise what we will just be covering in this section, firstly, I'm going to look at what collaboration actually is, what forms can it take. Lucy's then going to consider the potential advantages that this could bring to your charity. I'll discuss the guidance that's available from the Charity Commission, which you can use for further support, and share some examples where collaboration has worked really well for some charities. But Lucy will also cover what can go wrong. Forewarned is forearmed, of course. And finally, I'll hopefully help you by providing some key questions that trustees should be asking when they're considering whether collaboration is suitable for their charity. So collaborative working describes joint working by two or more charities on a project or venture in order to fulfil their purposes. This could relate to any aspects of the charity's activities. It could include their administration, resource sharing, streamlining of costs, fundraising activities, advertising, or raising their public profile. So you can see from the slide that collaboration can come in many different forms. It can be as simple as charities just networking together, sharing contacts, perhaps within the same area of work or the same community. I actually attended a great CEO charity monthly networking event for a while, and it was really useful for those CEOs to share, with Chatham House rules of course, the difficulties that their organisations has been facing, and we would brainstorm ideas of how they could address these issues. It was a really great way to get support from others with similar experiences. So this can often develop into a more formal sharing of information. An example of this could be, for example, a charity working in the field of medical support or research, where charities within the same medical sphere across the country or even across the world are sharing information to help provide quicker, better and more advanced results for their beneficiaries. In its more formal and possibly complex guise, collaboration can extend to legal agreements to share resources, so accommodation, transport, premises. In some situations we see shared contracts of employment or the provision of a shared finance function. Some charities might find that they have to enter into collaboration with another charity. We were discussing this earlier, that in order to deliver a particular project, we often see a local authority may just commission work and they only want to work with one key partner. But that charity isn't able to deliver every element of that project, and so they involve other charities too to fulfil that delivery. This can often also be the case where a charity wants or needs to work abroad in order to fulfil its objects, and therefore it needs the support of a local charity in order to deliver effectively and efficiently to its beneficiaries. A decision to work together can sometimes lead in the longer term to a formal merger. This is not often the objective at first when it's discussed in terms of collaboration, but can often be a byproduct. And we'll cover mergers in a little bit more detail in due course.
The Charity Commission encourages charities to look regularly at what more they can achieve for their beneficiaries. Every charity must have at the heart of all its decisions how to deliver the best outcome for its beneficiaries with its limited resources. One way this can be achieved is by joint working. There could be several drivers steering the trustees towards collaborative working. We recommend that trustees are clear from the outset about what they are trying to achieve and what the key motivators are. This can help with the decision-making process and avoid complications in the long term. The benefits of joint working arrangements, of course, will vary. On this slide, we have listed some of those, and I want to take this opportunity to elaborate on a few of these now. One of the main drivers is often reduced costs. For example, by benefiting from increased purchasing power by being part of a buying group, or avoiding duplication of support staff costs. Another opportunity of joint working could be better awareness and reach. Where charities have similar beneficiaries, they can potentially reach a wider number of people. As a result, their marketing and communication budget can stretch further by working together. Increased fundraising. Often charities worry that they are competing against each other for a limited pot of donations, but in fact it is possible to work together to increase the extent of total funds raised. The Disasters Emergency Committee is a great example of this. As shown in recent times, the coalition of charities working together under the DEC umbrella is a great example of DEC umbrella has raised money to support the Ukraine during the current crisis. One of the drivers, as Sarah discussed previously, could be to share skills and learning. Sharing experiences with others in the sector is likely to allow your charity to deliver improved services to beneficiaries. Perhaps the main aim of collaboration is to obtain efficiencies. Is your charity currently delivering services outside of your local area where another charity is better located and has the same skills to provide that service? Your charity might also want to start delivering a new service but doesn't currently have the capacity or skills to do this alone. And working alongside another, perhaps more experienced charity could make this step towards innovation less daunting.
Okay, so if you're about to embark on a possible joint venture, there's plenty of guidance available to help the trustees and the management teams decide whether collaboration is appropriate for you and to guide you through that process of choosing a partner to work with. The Charity Commission guidance includes this document, Choosing to Collaborate, Helping You to Succeed. So although it was published in 2009, it is still completely relevant and it provides lots of web links to other guidance which could also help. The guidance also includes links to various due diligence checklists. These can be used where the charity wants to make further steps to assure themselves that a collaboration is indeed in the best interest of the charity. The idea of a due diligence exercise is to make sure that you have full knowledge of the organisation you're hoping to work with and therefore can assess the risks and ensure that there are no surprises. The level of checks will of course depend on the size of the project and should be proportionate. The main elements of due diligence to consider which are covered by these checklists are commercial and strategic, financial and legal. This can be completed with or without professional advice. I would just say that the benefit of external advice is that there's an added objectivity to the research for the people that aren't involved on either side. The Charity Commission guidance also goes into more detail about how you might want to structure the collaboration in terms of a formal agreement. It might be a memorandum of understanding or a service level agreement or a legal contract. And the other key point covered in the guidance is about developing an exit strategy. It might seem funny to talk about exits at the point of the planning process, but actually the charities should agree whether and when they will leave or end the collaboration and how this will happen. There is also the CC34 Charity Commission guidance to read, which is an introduction to collaborative working and mergers. This guidance covers more detailed mergers. As I've said, in some cases, a collaborative arrangement can lead to a full merger. This is where two or more separate charities come together to form one organisation. Where the possibility of a formal merger is on the table, this is when the due diligence process we were mentioning earlier becomes really important. And we would definitely advise you getting support from your accountants and legal advisors at this point. You may also find that there are legal issues which will require the Charity Commission's input, and you'll find that they're really happy to help. Where there's property involved, this is likely to make the due diligence even more complex. And where there are employees, there will be added cheaply and pension considerations too. But before you start a due diligence process, I would really recommend that the most important part of the decision-making process is to ensure that the two organisations are compatible. that they have the same cultures and values. If the fit isn't right, any amount of work you do to try to align the organisations in due course just won't work. And don't forget to communicate. Communication is key. The leaders of the organisation must be able to explain the strategy to all their stakeholders. Why is a merger beneficial to them? And once the organisation has chosen the strategy, they must be clear to communicate what is in it for the beneficiaries, for their employees and for their donors. So we've already mentioned some successful forms of collaboration, and we wanted to bring this to life further by giving some more examples of joint working in the real world. Now, I've chosen a few which are obviously quite a big scale here, but I think you just need to have a think about, well, how can we change that scale and apply that to our organisations. So the London Marathon is a great example of charities coming together for one joint event when the general public can raise funds for multiple charities. I think that during COVID, when these events didn't happen, charities realised just how much they relied on these much needed donations. In 2020, when runners had to complete the event virtually, only 16 million was raised compared to a record 66 million in the previous year. Cancer research is a prime example of collaboration through sharing of knowledge. They're currently engaged with initiatives with more than 150 partners worldwide. They'll work with organisations across the academic, not-for-profit, government and private sectors which support their research strategy. And the collaboration will vary from large-scale co-funding of research projects to joint workshops and smaller conferences. And the whole aim is obviously to accelerate the progress in the fight against cancer. You may also have heard of the UK charity called the Born Free Foundation. They're an animal charity whose work is aiming to stop exploitation and suffering of animals. This work is obviously worldwide, and therefore, in order to operate effectively, they have to work in close collaboration with like-minded campaign groups across the world, such as the Ape Alliance, the Great AIDS Survival Project. And in doing so, they form a wide range of influential international coalitions, alliances and partnerships. They believe that by co-working, pooling resources and sharing expertise, Born Free is able to maximise its efforts and achieve more for wildlife. I've mentioned previously that it's often necessary to conduct local authority contracts through one lead charity, which will then require other charities' involvement. We have a client who are providing respite care, where this was the case a couple of years ago. The relevant local authority decided they didn't want to engage with multiple charities anymore. They just wanted to award one contract, and then they would allow that entity to subcontract as required. So a new community interest company was established, which won the contract, and then they continued to work with the charities who were previously delivering those services. Interestingly, the parties involved have now, as a result of this collaboration, successfully merged. And I previously mentioned local networking monthly event I attended for charity CEOs, and I'm sure you yourselves have all been part of something similar and have found it useful in terms of knowledge sharing.
So far, we've only spoken about the positives and advantages of collaboration. However, as with everything, there are risks involved and relationships can go wrong. We have mentioned previously that it's important to be clear from the outset about the objects of the trustees want from a joint working arrangement and to consider the impact on their organisations, its beneficiaries, its staff and its reputation. So what can the charity gain and what could it lose? Barriers to success should be identified at an early stage so that the management team and the trustees can consider how these can be overcome. This slide sets out some of the potential barriers. This is the reality we often see in practice, which can result in collaboration failing at the early stages. And these can include a lack of adequate communication with all of the stakeholders, no stated objects or evaluation mechanisms, difficulties integrating staff as the cultural fit hasn't been sufficiently considered, a lack of project planning and process management, and rushing the process or having different expectations or unrealistic targets. It is also important to consider any tax consequences. Does the project still fall within the primary objectives of the charity, and therefore any income will be exempt from tax? Does the new joint venture give rise to a taxable supply for VAT purposes? These are all questions which your accountant will be able to help with. Ultimately, the responsibility for deciding whether to proceed with a collaborative project lies with the trustees, and they should be clear that the benefits outweigh any potential pitfalls. Sarah is now going to run through some of the questions that trustees can ask when evaluating such a project.
I'm just looking at Colin now, and the word back was mentioned, and he goes a bit smart. So hopefully the information covered so far has made it clear that collaborative working can bring successes to an organisation, but it does also come with risks. And therefore it is really important that trustees are asking the right questions as part of the planning process so that they can make the right decisions. So the key questions that we would expect trustees to be asking include: can we better meet the needs of our charity and our beneficiaries by working with others? What does our charity stand to gain or lose from collaborating? Does the collaboration further our charitable objects? Does our governing document allow us to collaborate? How can we identify potential partners? Do we already have an existing relationship with them? Is the proposed partner compatible in terms of objects, culture, their governance arrangements, their organisational structure and their funding base? How will we structure that joint venture? Will we need a formal agreement? And are there significant reputational and financial risks? And if yes, should we be carrying out due diligence? So this gives a flavour of the importance of the planning stage and getting clarity for the project. But don't forget, you're not alone. There are resources available to help you. There's a wealth of information on the internet, particularly the SCBO and Charity Christian website. And please approach your lawyer and accountant for advice too. You may be moving into this area for the first time, but they're likely to have seen it with previous clients, and therefore they can help guide you through the process. So in order to just cover very briefly the 5 top takeaways I'd like you to go leave this room with is: number 1, just please take time to assess the options available to you. Think about finding the right partner. Planning is key. You must have a good project plan. But also consider what can go wrong so that you can prepare and manage those risks. And lastly, I can't say